Looplings, and welcome back to the Loopy Homestead. So today we thought we'd give you guys a tour of our chicken coops. We've got one for our egg layers and for our meat birds, and we have some interesting things you guys have been curious about, so we thought we'd share. The coop that we use for our egg layers is to my left, and it was originally standing here when we first moved in, but it didn't have a run, it didn't really have nesting boxes, and it just wasn't exactly what we wanted it to be. So one of the biggest things we added is what's behind me. The original chicken coop didn't have anywhere to store feed or supplies, so that was definitely something we had to tackle. Otherwise, when the snow came, we'd be unburying things to feed the chickens.
Inside our coop is a roost for the chickens to sit on, as well as kind of a shelf, which leads up to the nesting boxes we cut in the side. Up top, we have a heating lamp, which is controlled by a timer that we can set ourselves, and a camera that we call our chicken cam to check on them when we're in the house.
Also our area where we keep our feeds for the meat birds and for the egg layers.
And these are just so if we get mice out here, they don't obliterate our food. And as everybody knows, rodents aren't exactly great for keeping things clean. To my right here are a few different things. We have an extra water barrel that we might put to a different purpose at some point. We have some extra waterers in case it gets too cold and we just can't keep the pipes from freezing outside. We can plug these guys in and make sure that they have water every day. So this space has another dedicated purpose also. Since we raise meat birds, we need to process them at some point. And that's simply just easier if everything is out all together. We didn't want to have to go back and forth from the house for each individual thing. So what we have here is an arm that swings out that we can hang our cones on. Once we're done with that, we've got a propane burner with a big pot that we can use to scald them so the feathers come off easier. When they're done there, we put them in the electric plucker that we have. Makes that process go so much easier. And after that, we gut them, take off the parts that we don't want, and then move them into these. There are 3 sinks that we usually fill with water and ice. Of course, we clean them first, but that way we can keep them cold while we finish the process before we're ready to take them in the house. So I'm standing on the outside of our nesting boxes, and this is just to give us easy access to what's on the inside. Originally, the coop didn't have anything for nesting, so we would have needed it anyway, and we prefer to be able to just walk out and grab them.
It opens easily, so we can walk up. We can just stand right here and collect the eggs without having to go into the coop. Makes it easy to clean their nesting boxes out since we don't have to climb in anywhere. So yeah, it's really nice to have. And the hens seem to love it because they're producing well.
Another stellar feature is this guy right here, our water collection system. Because we get a lot of snow in the winter and therefore a lot of spring melt, we wanted to make sure we made the most of it. So on the roofs, we installed some gutters that have filters to keep things like pine needles and leaves out. The water then runs down and runs into this barrel here, which fills up in no time at all to max capacity. Even in the hottest months, our chickens have water. From this barrel, it runs down through a tube into their run and into automatic water cups that will fill as they peck and drink at them. Also, we installed an outlet valve. This way, if we want to get water out of it or we need to drain it for some reason, it's real easy to do. So I'm inside the run right now, and I wanted to show you a couple of our things. One, this is the waterers that we were talking to you about that come from the barrel. The chickens just peck at them and they fill with water here so they can get some. And then over here hanging in it, we've got just a feeder that we put their oyster shell in and their grit to make sure that they have all of those things that they need to. One really unique thing about this meat bird pen is that we have a brooder built into the back of it. When we get them as chicks, we fence this back part off and we allow them to, just grow up in there right near some heat lamps. It saves us from having to do a lot of shuffling and moving as they get larger. So today they're big enough, and I'm going to go ahead and open this gate. You can hear some happy chickens beside me. Both of our runs are about 8 feet wide by at least 12 feet long. The meat birds have a little more space because they don't actually have the full-size coop that the egg layers have, but they don't really need it as much. We only raise them for about 8 weeks, and then they end up in our freezer. The egg layers have about 12 feet of space between the end of the run and the start of their coop, but because they're outside more, they get a little bit more leeway than that. Right now, these guys are about 4 weeks old, so we're about halfway through their lifespan. We're about ready to switch them because they're done with their smaller feeder and waterer, and it's time for them to move on to these bigger hopper feeders as well as a bigger waterer.
You can see my dad here feeding the chickens. Our hoppers fill from the outside and deliver to the inside, so day or night, good or bad weather, our chickens always have access to food.
Yes, with that many chickens, this will last about 2 days.
You'll probably notice that our sets of hoppers look a little different, and that's because as you go along, you learn a little something. And we discovered ones that angle out a little bit more are definitely a lot easier to fill. Our area has a lot of aerial predators, so we don't let our chickens free range all the time. But we do have a temporary fence that we can pick up and move when we'd like to. And even though it is indeed easy to move, it's still a family affair. Thanks for joining us back on the Loopy Homestead. If you'd like to stay in the loop, please subscribe to our channel. If you'd also like to help us find more looplings like you, please like and share our videos.
I've never heard a chicken make that.